The late afternoon sun, a weak London effort, glinted off the polished chrome of the Bentley parked outside the exclusive Viridian Club in Mayfair. Alexander Vance, 32, adjusted the cuff of his bespoke suit, his latest iPhone hot in his hand, scrolling through stock portfolios. He embodied Mayfair, impeccably dressed, impossibly confident, and utterly oblivious to anything beyond the rarefied air of his inherited world. A sleek Rolls-Royce purred to a stop beside him. David Hayes, Alexander's equally privileged best friend, smiled from behind designer sunglasses. "Darling, ready for our spa day? Platinum package, naturally." Alexander sighed. "Perfect. I desperately need to decompress after this morning's board meeting. The sheer lack of sophistication is appalling." He slid into the cool leather passenger seat. David shuddered delicately. "At the charity luncheon yesterday, I had to sit next to someone who actually thought it was appropriate to discuss public transportation." Alexander chuckled. "Speaking of transportation, my driver called in sick. I'll need something for tonight's gallery opening." "Use my driver," David offered. "Or better yet, just call an Uber, though heaven knows what kind of people drive those things." Alexander wrinkled his nose. "Absolutely not. I don't need some random person in my personal space, probably discussing their life problems." "You're right. These service people never understand boundaries," David agreed. "They think because they're providing a service, they can treat you like equals." Alexander nodded absently, already planning his evening outfit. Their conversation drifted to holiday homes in the south of France and shopping trips to Milan. As David's driver navigated through downtown traffic, Alexander barely noticed the bustling streets below, the red double-decker buses, the scurrying commuters, the complex, ordinary lives existing outside his gilded cage. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. An anonymous text message. The view from the top is often the most distorted. Alexander dismissed it as spam. The following Tuesday, Alexander found himself in Harrods. He was searching for a unique gift when Chloe Davis, a young sales assistant with neatly styled braids, approached him. "Can I help you find anything specific today, sir?" Alexander barely glanced up. "Something in emerald green, size large, nothing too common. I can't have him wearing something I might see on just anyone." "Of course. If you'll follow me, I can show you our exclusive collection," Chloe replied calmly. As Chloe led him to a separate section, Alexander's condescending assumption solidified. This was probably Chloe's best job opportunity, retail her ceiling. Yet, as Chloe explained the provenance of a stunning emerald velvet smoking jacket, Alexander found himself grudgingly impressed. Chloe had an intuitive understanding of textiles, cut, and the subtle social signals clothing conveyed. "It's adequate," Alexander said dismissively. "What about accessories? I need someone who understands sophisticated styling, not just basic coordination." Chloe's smile remained professional, but Alexander caught a fleeting flicker of hurt in her eyes. "I have extensive training in color coordination and personal styling, sir. I'd be happy to create several complete looks for your consideration." "Fine, but please be mindful of time. I have a lunch appointment at the Arts Club." As Chloe assembled 3 flawless ensembles, Alexander was increasingly impressed. The young woman had exceptional taste. "You're quite good at this," Alexander admitted. "Thank you. I'm actually working on my fashion design degree," Chloe revealed. "This job helps me understand luxury retail from the inside." Alexander felt an unexpected pang. Was it guilt? Respect? He quickly suppressed it, making his purchases. Walking to his car, he glanced back and saw Chloe sketching intricate designs in a small, worn notebook. Alexander dismissed it as a hobby. The next night, Alexander faced a dilemma. His regular chauffeur was unavailable for the gallery opening. Reluctantly, he opened the Uber app. The car that arrived was a modest Honda Civic. The driver who stepped out to open his door was a tall woman in her mid-30s, wearing a crisp button-down shirt and a genuine, open smile. "Mr. Vance, I'm Simone Jacobs. Ready to head to the Whitmore Gallery?" Alexander slid into the back seat, pulling out his phone. "Yes, and please, no music or conversation. I need to make some calls." "Of course, sir." But as they pulled into Mayfair traffic, Alexander found himself studying Simone in the rearview mirror. Simone drove with careful precision. Classical music played softly. Mozart, Alexander recognized. "Excuse me," Alexander said, then caught himself. "Yes, sir?" "Nothing. Just drive carefully." 20 minutes into the ride, traffic ground to a complete halt near Trafalgar Square. Alexander's phone showed they'd be at least an hour late. "I'm truly sorry about this, sir," Simone said, genuinely apologetic. "I should have anticipated the construction." "This is exactly why I don't use ride services," Alexander snapped. "Professional drivers know how to avoid these situations." "You're absolutely right, sir. This is my responsibility." Simone's calm acceptance disarmed Alexander. He'd expected defensiveness. Instead, Simone took accountability with quiet dignity. As they sat in traffic, Alexander noted the thick textbook on the passenger seat, Educational Psychology. Nothing about Simone matched his expectations. Another anonymous text flashed on Alexander's screen. Some detours lead to unexpected destinations. The next morning, Alexander asked his assistant, Chloe, about service workers. "Do you ever think about the people who work service jobs? Wonder about their stories?" Chloe looked surprised. "Not really, sir. Most of those drivers are between real jobs." "What if it's not temporary? What if it's someone with real potential who just never got the right opportunities?" "Mr. Vance, you're overthinking this. These aren't our people." That phrase, "not our people," stuck with Alexander. When had he started dividing the world into categories? During lunch with David, he mentioned taking an Uber. "You took an Uber?" David looked genuinely horrified. "Alexander, darling, those people could be anyone. Criminals, drug addicts, who knows what." He was perfectly professional. "They always are until they're not. Promise me you'll go back to proper car services." Alexander promised, but privately wondered what defined proper. The second Uber ride happened by choice. Alexander feigned he left an heirloom cufflink in Simone's car, but truthfully, he was curious. He texted Simone's number. "Mr. Vance, I thought that was you." Simone smiled as Alexander approached her car. "Did you leave something in my car the other night?" "Actually, no. I just wanted to apologize for being rude about the traffic delay." "That's unnecessary, sir, but I appreciate it. Can I give you a ride somewhere?" This time, Alexander slid into the front passenger seat. "What's the textbook about?" "Educational Psychology. I'm finishing my master's degree in counseling." Alexander blinked. "You're in graduate school part-time while working?" "Takes longer, but it's manageable." "Why counseling?" "I grew up in foster care, bounced around a lot, never had stable adult guidance. I want to help kids who are where I was, smart enough to succeed but lacking the support system to navigate the path." Alexander felt something shift in his chest. "That's admirable." "It's personal. I drive for Uber because the hours are flexible around my class schedule. Plus, I meet interesting people." "Don't most passengers ignore you?" "Most do. Some are rude. Occasionally, someone surprises me by being genuinely kind." They'd reached Alexander's destination, but he didn't immediately get out. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever get angry about assumptions people make?" Simone considered this. "Anger is exhausting. I'd rather prove assumptions wrong through actions than waste energy being bitter about ignorance." As Alexander walked into his building, he realized he'd just had the most genuine conversation he'd experienced in years. The family intervention happened over Sunday brunch at the Royal Yacht Club. Eleanor had orchestrated it. "We're concerned about you, darling," Eleanor began. "Chloe mentioned you've been dwelling on inappropriate matters." "Inappropriate matters?" Alexander set down his mimosa. "Taking Uber rides, asking personal questions about the drivers. It's not like you to be so curious about the help." George leaned forward. "Alexander, these people aren't our equals." Julian, Alexander's brother, nodded. "Sometimes successful people develop guilt complexes and start identifying with their employees. It's self-sabotage." "I'm not identifying with anyone," Alexander protested. "I'm just questioning whether we might be too quick to judge people based on their circumstances." "Circumstances reflect choices," Eleanor said firmly. "People end up where they deserve to be." "What if circumstances reflect opportunity rather than character?" Alexander asked quietly. The table fell silent. George cleared his throat. Sweetheart, this sounds like liberal academic nonsense. You didn't get where you are by making excuses for people who haven't achieved the same level of success. Maybe I got where I am because I was born into advantages others never had, Alexander countered. Alexander Julian Vance. Eleanor's voice was sharp. That is enough. Your father and I worked very hard to provide you with opportunities. Suggesting otherwise is ungrateful. David finally spoke. Alexander, honey, you're scaring us. This isn't like you. Maybe you need a holiday. I'm not confused, Alexander said, standing. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. As he walked out, he heard Julian mutter to their father. We might need to consider intervention options if this continues. The crisis erupted during the annual Vance Foundation Gala at the Royal Albert Hall. Alexander was presenting scholarships. He saw the wealthy donors and the scholarship recipients, Aisha Khan, who worked 3 jobs and ran a coding club, Liam O'Connell, who juggled jobs while caring for sick parents. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to present this year's scholarship awards, he began, following the script. But as Aisha approached, Alexander spoke from the heart. Aisha's story reminds us that talent and intelligence exist in every community, but opportunity doesn't. She didn't need to overcome her circumstances. She needed the rest of us to recognize that circumstances don't define potential. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eleanor shot him a warning look. He continued with Liam. Liam represents thousands of brilliant young people whose families work multiple jobs just to survive. The question isn't whether these students deserve opportunity. The question is why opportunity has been so unequally distributed in the first place. The murmur grew louder. George half stood. These scholarships aren't charity, Alexander continued, his voice stronger. They're a small attempt to level a playing field that's been deliberately tilted for generations. Every student here has already proven their worth by succeeding despite obstacles most of us can't imagine. Alexander, Julian called. Perhaps we should. Alexander interrupted. That a system requiring extraordinary effort from some while providing automatic advantages to others isn't merit-based, it's rigged. The ballroom fell silent. Alexander saw Aisha wiping away tears, Liam nodding, and several young people looking at him with hope. Walking out of that ballroom felt like stepping out of a costume he'd worn his entire life. As he spoke, Alexander had seen Julian leave the room, looking agitated. Alexander found Simone waiting in her car outside the hotel. He slid into the passenger seat, still in his expensive suit but feeling more himself. I think I just burned every bridge I've ever built. Good bridges or bad bridges? Simone asked. Bridges to a place I don't want to be anymore. They drove to a community center in Hackney. Inside, Alexander saw students working on applications, mothers in literacy classes. Simone explained she volunteered there. She pointed to a young girl reading. She's Aisha, 10 years ago. Started in our reading program, now she's heading to Oxford with your family's scholarship. You mean Aisha grew up here? Alexander asked, stunned. We thought we were helping strangers, but Aisha isn't a stranger. She's someone who's been fighting her whole life for the chances I was born with. Simone then pointed to a framed photo on the wall of a young girl receiving a certificate. That's me, at age 10. The scholarship I received, it was from an anonymous donor connected to this center. They told me it was from someone who believed in giving back. Alexander looked closely at the photo. Behind young Simone, in the blurry background, he saw a much younger George Vance, his own father, shaking hands with the center's director. Alexander was stunned. My father, he was here? Simone, seeing Alexander's shocked face, looked at the photo too. He used to quietly support the center years ago. He was the anonymous donor for many of us, I think. Alexander sank into a plastic chair, overwhelmed. His father, the man who championed standards, had secretly been a benefactor. Was it genuine compassion or guilt? The revelation complicated everything. Starting to understand the difference between charity and justice? Simone asked softly. I want to help, really help, not just write checks. Simone smiled, unguarded. I was hoping you'd say that. The next week, Alexander submitted his resignation from the Vance Foundation Board, proposing a radical restructuring of their scholarship program. "Mr. Vance, this is professional suicide," Chloe pleaded. "Your family will never forgive you." "My family created a foundation that helps 12 students a year while preserving their own sense of moral superiority. I want to create something that actually addresses systemic problems." The local newspaper picked up the story. Mayfair heir resigns from family foundation, citing structural inequality. The backlash was swift and brutal. Eleanor called him naive. George threatened to reduce his trust fund. David stopped returning his calls. One afternoon, Alexander received a text from Julian. "Meet me for a coffee. Need to talk. It's about Shadow Broker." They met. Julian looked nervous. "Look, about the texts and the Shadow Broker thing. That was me. I was anonymously communicating with a local journalist, trying to expose dodgy dealings within the foundation, specifically Uncle Edward's questionable investments. I knew if I went public, Dad would disown me. I saw you struggling, and I sent you those messages, hoping to nudge you. I thought if anyone could make a difference, it was you, if you'd only open your eyes." Alexander stared at his brother. All this time, he'd been bracing for an enemy, only to find a convoluted ally. Other responses surprised him. Aisha sent a handwritten thank you note. Liam called to express support. The community center director invited him to volunteer. "You know there's no going back, right?" Simone asked as they walked through the center where Alexander now volunteered 3 nights a week. "I don't want to go back." "Your family might come around eventually." Alexander thought about the years of careful conversations and comfortable assumptions. "Maybe, but I can't live my life waiting for other people to evolve. What about us?" Alexander stopped, turning to face Simone. "What about us? A few months ago, you barely saw me as human. Now, I see you as the most genuine person in my life. That's not the same as love." "No, it's not, but this is." He leaned in and kissed Simone there in the community center hallway, choosing love over expectation, authenticity over approval. When they broke apart, Simone smiled. "That's definitely not charity." "No," Alexander agreed. "It's not." 1 year later, Alexander stood in the bustling offices of the Bridge Builders Collective, the nonprofit he'd founded with his remaining trust fund. The space buzzed with activity: university counselors, career coaches, volunteer tutors. Simone entered his office carrying 2 coffees. She'd finished her master's and was now the organization's director of community outreach. "The O'Connell family wants to thank you again," Simone said, settling into the chair. "Liam got into medical school." "He got into medical school because he's brilliant and hardworking. We just helped level the playing field. Still proud of you, though." Alexander looked around his office. No mahogany desk or crystal awards, but walls covered with graduation photos and thank you letters. "You know what's strange? I thought giving up my old life would feel like losing everything. Instead, it feels like I finally found everything, including me." "Especially you." Simone reached across the desk, taking Alexander's hand. "Aisha's engagement party is this weekend. She wants us both there." Alexander smiled, thinking about the young woman who'd unknowingly started his transformation. "I wouldn't miss it." Through his office window, he could see the vibrant, diverse neighborhood where he now lived. His family still wasn't speaking to him, but he'd gained something more valuable than their approval. He'd gained himself. "Ready for the staff meeting?" Simone asked. "Always," Alexander replied, following him toward a room full of people working to create the kind of world he'd once thought impossible. A world where opportunity matched potential, where love transcended boundaries, and where home meant belonging rather than ownership.